please remember to like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. All of the YouTube things, just hit all of the buttons, except the dislike button. Don't hit that one. What I want to talk about next is the Nuggets and their upcoming season. Who have the biggest redemption arcs, do you think? And or who has the most to gain next season when it comes to their story, their narrative as a player and as a member of this team?
Biggest redemption? Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I don't know what happens with the contract stuff, so I don't know how that factors into things, but Jamal is, like, a good one for me. Just him playing 82 games or close to that, I think would be really nice. I just felt like a really frustrating year from afar. You could, like, sense it in his pressers.
Yeah.
Like, he was just, like, annoyed that he would get going and then he'd get hurt and then he'd try to, play himself back in shape. Because that's part of, like, when you're injured, but the other part is, like, you're just not playing live game reps while everybody else is. So it's like other teams are getting 82 games, getting their win, getting everything. And if you keep having these, like, breaks, that sucks. Like, that really messes up your rhythm. So I think that would be a big one for me, is just, like, the year of Jamal. Because, like, Jamal, like, it's kind of weird. I feel like, I don't know, like, maybe this is just me, like, yelling at a cloud, but, like, I feel like I don't know, like, he was so good in the 2023.
Yeah, no, like,
so
and
amazing.
we don't talk about it anymore. And I don't know, maybe this
not in good ways anyway.
And it's like, damn, like, that dude's, like, really good when he's, like, physically healthy and, like, gelling. He's, like, feels the rhythm of the game. Like, that guy's just efficient. He's, like, the heart of the team, honestly, just in terms of, like, the energy that he gives the crowd, the energy that he gives the team. I mean, even this year, like, he still had those moments. He hits the game winners. Game 7, like, that first half, completely energized everything. So he's my number one pick for sure. I'm high on Jamal this year. I think this is, like, one of those times where Jamal is, like, Jamal loves the narrative, I think, in a way.
I think he does. He seems like he's incredibly online as well.
Yeah, that's true. That too. But he does. Like, when that whole thing, like, so they go down 2-0, right, against Minnesota, and Malone says he shows the team, the all the highlight clips of talking
ESPN,
heads.
like, everyone.
Guess who played better than anybody on the floor in Game 3?
In Game 3, yeah.
Jamal.
That was Jamal.
Like,
the
this
Jamal
is set
booze.
It's set up to be the year of Jamal. Like, it's like the, like, oh, I don't know, like, is this guy, like, worth a max? Like, blah, blah, blah. And, like, there's all this chatter, and this just feels like the Jamal setup. I'm kind of ready for it. So he's probably my number one for me. That I'm just like, I think that it would just make too much sense, right?
Yeah.
For this to be the year where Jamal is, like, all-star level, awesome season, plays all 80 games, is right when everybody's like, oh yeah, I don't know, man.
Watch him make all NBA and then the dynasty's over because he gets a supermax. Like, I thought we were out of the woods after last season.
It just feels like it's ready to be written. Like, I'm ready to write that story. It's like the Jamal,
Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this question in terms of like, who has the most to gain next season?
Matt, you're definitely right. Jamal proved himself so much in that championship run that it was like he almost had no questions left to answer. And I thought he would come into the other season, like, really confident because he just, like, showed what he could do. And then he kind of has this season, so he does seem like someone who kind of needs the chip on his shoulder and, like, the narrative to be against him. He's the bright lights merchant, and this whole season's the bright light season for him. So he's going to do it every game. But I do think about MPJ too, just because I feel like he's kind of underappreciated by fans because they don't necessarily realize how vital he is to the offense and just how much better he can make the Nuggets. Yeah, and the defense. Just everything he does. I mean, the starting five, I know we just lost KCP, so I mean, I want to see how it looks. But if MPJ can just add, like, he could have a really good shooting season and then have, like, a kind of lull in a playoff series again, and fans are going to be pissed. So I want to see, like, a really consistent playoffs from him, which is a long time away. But during the regular season, just adding a couple little things to his game, or even just the Nuggets stylistically adding in something that could feature him a little more, I'm not expecting him to like add in all this playmaking stuff like that. Like, but just a little bit here and there around his game that could really show that he's really worth his contract, because I still think he already is, but there's just a lot of doubt and even a lot of narratives. He seems like the expendable one, the one you could trade necessarily, like the most tradable contract to break up if we want to add some pieces. We let KCP walk instead of doing that this offseason. So, yeah, I'm just kind of looking at MPJ and seeing how he does, because he played 81 games, and I think he'll do it again. And yeah, I just like how he looks, and
I'd actually
I
prefer
don't.
if he didn't play 81 games.
Yeah, that's
Because
true. Then we're not
it'd be
running
super
him ragged.
cool if we had like a 6-game lead on the rest of the West going into
Yeah.
April, and then they get to coast the rest of the way. That'd be super cool.
How
actually.
healthy we were was actually such a gift and a curse.
I
Yeah.
Because we
know.
were like, everybody plays, and it's like, oh, this is sweet, like top, whatever, top 3 seed, and then it's like, man, we're tired.
Yeah.
Because we
And
played so
really,
much.
like, I've said this before, but I think that it's most important to me that the front court gets as much rest as possible, our starting front court,
Yeah.
Jokic and AG in particular. I'd put NPJ in there just because for him to be as fresh as possible for the playoffs, and for his shooting to be like at its height. Like, it's best when he's coming off of some rest, and I'm fine with that. But I don't really care if our wings and guards necessarily are like rested, because for the most part, I kind of expect like a similar level of production from them, and their bodies don't take quite the beating
Mhm.
from their particular roles that Yoke and AG in particular do. For this question, my answer is definitely Christian, and the reason I say that is because if you ask anybody about how the team reacted after losing in Game 7, almost everyone says that Christian took that loss the hardest of any player, at least in the immediate reaction. And you think about the fact that he hadn't like finished a season without winning a championship since like high school or something, until this Game 7 loss against the Wolves. And the fact that he's probably going to be stepping into a starting role in his third season in the NBA. A lot of people have been talking about how difficult it is going to be to replace KCP and what he brings. And, Will, you and I have talked a lot about what things Christian can bring that would be potential like improvements on the position versus, some of his own limitations that who knows where he's going to, take a leap this summer. But he was also Booth's first draft pick as general manager. He's kind of, when you think about it, the poster boy of Project Dynasty. We're going to see this season what it looks like when one of these young guys gets to, take this starting role. And that's going to play a really important part in how the season goes, because not banking on the bench to not be a disaster. You still want those starters minutes to be incredible. And in order to do that, he's going to have to, at least fit into the role within the starting lineup. But I think he's going to have to do at least a little bit more, especially if it's going to be, a viable option for the playoffs for him to be stepping into that KCP role. I talked about this extensively when I was making my case for why the Nuggets should keep KCP, but in the playoffs, he was playing 35 minutes a night. Christian's going to be playing starters minutes for the first time in his career. And, he's been incredibly durable in terms of like games played and all that, but it's a different burden when you are that guy that's taking on the primary defensive matchups every night and for over 30 minutes a night, etc. And now we also only have really like 2.5 shooting guards on this roster. So it's not like he's coming in to back up KCP. Like, he's going to be that guy. And I think that while that's a lot of pressure for him, it's also an opportunity. And I think, especially based on the fact that his mom seems very online as well, they're very aware of the narratives. And I think that's going to be like weighing on him, maybe in a good way going into next season.
His role is also like simplified in a way, because that bench unit was kind of like, it didn't really have an identity last year. Like,
Yeah.
in theory it did. And there was a lot of like, I think I mentioned up top, like there was a lot put on his plate early because
Mhm.
he's in a unit that's really kind of in a transition year where you're trying to figure out what that looks like. Versus now, it's like you're coming in the starting lineup. We
Mhm.
want you to guard the other team's best player, continue to cut, play alongside Nikola, and be active. And the biggest thing probably for him is up your 3-point volume.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
all right, you're hitting them at 30%. Like, we need that to be, and it's not like KCP was taking like 7 threes a game, but I think, I don't know what he was shooting last year, but like, we probably want like 4 or 5 threes in a
Yeah.
game.
He's
So it's
probably gonna be open more than KCP was
for
too,
sure,
though,
for
because he
sure,
doesn't have that reputation as a sniper,
for sure.
in part because of, like, the hesitation on those shots regardless of the efficiency.
So it might be more, but like at least you look at this and it's not like, all right, we need you to do like 30 things and then also be good at what you're good at already, which is defense and cutting like that. Like it is like a pretty, in terms of like a growth path for a young player, it is pretty streamlined, right? Like you're like, do what you continue to
Mhm.
do. We really value that stuff. We really need it in this starting unit. We just want you to, let's just take 3-point shooting. We want you to take more threes like that. I think in a way makes it a little bit easier versus being burdened with a ton of expectations, but also like things you have to do physically on the floor too.
Ideally, you don't want to lose a KCP player and then have to play someone like Christian to replace him. But like in a vacuum, I feel like when you look at a lot of teams that are trying to develop players, I like starting them sooner than later, just because you don't want to like situation like Kuminga on the Warriors where it's like, there was like tension between him and the coach in the
Yeah.
front office, and then you're like talking about trading him, and all they
Yeah,
had to
but,
do
like,
was just
Kuminga's
play
like
him.
a
But
lottery pick, and he has more
Yeah.
yeah,
sort of upside than Christian,
expectations
so
are
I wouldn't
are
worry about, like, the
different.
tension part.
But
Yeah.
but you laid it out perfectly, and I had been kind of trying to express that idea too, that the messaging with CB is going to be so much clearer as a starter, despite the role being like technically more difficult and demanding.
Yeah, and he just like he makes your entire starting unit different. Like it's just bigger, it rebounds
Yeah.
better. So there are gonna be like questions regarding like I think spacing is like one of
Yeah,
them. Like
the biggest one.
that
Yeah,
was, I mean, for a team that runs so much through its 2-man game, you know, yes, having AG in the dunker is a huge part of it, but also it was like we have Mike on one side of the floor and we have KCP in the other corner, or you could run it on a sideline and have those two sharing the
Right.
floor, right? So it just, that part of it, I think, is the big question mark. Because before it was kind of like you got to pick your poison, right? You're like, all right, are we giving up the corner 3 to KCP or are we sending 2 to Nikola? Wait, but that means the AG is going to be open for the lob. And now I think it's a little bit more like we're worried about Nikola
yeah.
Jokic. We are very aware of the Aaron Gordon lob possibility. Christian Braun is first time starting. That feels like the natural rotation is like we're gonna rotate off that guy and kind of like,
Yeah.
and we saw,
Right.
by the way, we saw teams do that to Peyton
Yep.
last year, the Memphis game, that regular season game in like December-ish, where he hit, I think I don't know how many threes he hit. He definitely had his
It
career
was
high.
like 5 it was 5, I think.
It was crazy. It
I
was
remember, yeah,
it was a
Jaren
fun
was, I
game.
think, roaming off of him. That was a fun game. I
There's
love
gonna be.
blowout wins. Like,
I do too. I do too.
they should give us more of those. That's a really good point that you make about the importance of that spacing for the two-man game, and we have this two-man game merchantry on this team, especially when it comes to how reliant they have been on the clutch the last couple of seasons. It's not a crazy number of clutch games when you look at it compared to the other teams, but it's one of those things where you think they've been so dominant here, and part of that is because the teams are either like scared to help off of those corners, or when they do, you could rely on KCP to be one of the people that could punish that choice. And we had Justin Holiday filling in for him a couple of times. I don't know that he's going to be coming back next year, who could also take and make those shots in big moments. And it almost makes me wonder if they're going to have to develop a new identity, not just in the clutch, but throughout the game, because we did see last season, I think part of what made the team feel just like, I wouldn't say stale, but just a little bit more stagnant, is that they became incredibly reliant on the two-man game throughout the course of games, and the offense would not stall out because it was still like incredibly efficient, but it wasn't as much, movement oriented and things like that. And I wonder if having Christian in the starting lineup, having one less shooter, that is respected as KCP is by defenses, is going to force the team to reorient themselves a little bit offensively. So it's also an opportunity to try to, you're talking about Christian just like upping his 3-point volume and really not hesitating on those shots. I would also like to see that. But I would also like to see him drive more confidently and finish at the rim a lot better than he did in year 2. But a lot of the things that we're talking about here have to do with his confidence, right? Because we saw when he took those 3-point shots, particularly when it wasn't in the corners, like he could make them, but he has to be ready to make that. And when he's not going to do that, he's got to be prepared to pump fake and drive and either make a play or get all the way to the rim. And I think he has the tools to do both of those things, but it's really just about like putting it all together, especially mentally, I think.
Yeah, and he's also a good screener, which I like.
Yeah.
That's intriguing. I don't know what that turns into, but like in theory, a good screener and somebody who's good above the break gives you more options to run things. Now, I don't know if he's gonna be able to like screen, catch, rotate, shoot, but we don't know. I love that point about like the offense and like diversifying it, because I'm gonna trot the Hunter and the hunted line. You ready? That line was the line of the season last year. It was hunted, and my impression of that was not so much like teams. Yes, like they're in theory giving their best shot against you, but you're also like you're now the scouting report that every team's looking at. That's really to me. That's what that means. Like it's not that teams are like, oh, we're playing harder and we had extra Gatorade on the bench. No, it's like teams are like looking at how you organize your offense, what works well for you, your different counters out of that. And they're saying that's what we have to be. Like we have to exceed that. And you see that sure thing, like against Minnesota, I think it was second game. What does Rudy Gobert do? He kind of plays in between Nikola and AG
that game one.
And that was my first like, oh, this is what that means. Like, it's not just teams are playing you hard, but it's like you are the team. Like everybody has seen how you play. I mean, you think about the Warriors for years and years and years. What happens? Well, Houston comes along and they're this super switchy team. They're like,
oh no, what if we like tricked KD into just right. They're not nearly as efficient as when they play the beautiful game.
For sure. Like you take teams out of their rhythm, and then it becomes a question of,
can you do something else well enough? Right?
And the answer last year was no, like the Nuggets could not. So now, guess what? That change might be built in. Like you might be building out those counters because you've made a pretty significant structural change to like your offense and your starting lineup. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of different things you can do. It's a big year for Malone. Like I love this. I think it's like for him.
And David Adelman, who is a Denver Nugget again next year because he did not get a head coaching job, sadly, for other teams, happily for us.
Yes, I think for sure. But that's kind of fun. Is like there are going to be the starting unit's the one that I have. Like if we're looking at the projected lineups, the bench unit I don't have. Like I get what it looks like in theory. The starting unit's the one where I'm like, I don't know how that unit plays on both sides of the ball. I don't know what the defense looks like. Is KCP and Yoke were such a tandem in terms of defending pick and rolls. What does that look like with Christian? Do they have that same chemistry?
Such good chemistry.
I know. I don't know.
Such good chemistry.
Yeah, they knew exactly what to expect.
They both had great hands. They're going to play up. Like they're going to, they're just like working telepathically defensively. That's such an underrated part of the Nuggets.
Hopefully Jokic can communicate some of that and what he was expecting. When KCP's doing this is what I thought, and this is what I want you to do. And it may just take just a little bit of,
and vice versa. Like I want Christian to also speak up and be that communicator on the floor too, because from everything I've read and heard, like that was a really big part of KCP's role as well. Was just like communicating, not just in, when they're trying to defend something 2-on-2 with Jokic, but making sure everyone was getting in position, people getting matched up. That's also on AG as well. And it's really everybody. I know Jokic is become more vocal too, but Christian being like a new addition to the starting lineup. What I don't want is like timidity in that role, because we don't have time for that.
Yeah, it's go time. It's not the whole roster. It's kind of like that. It is go time. I know there's a long-term window, but you got Nikola Jokic, right? Like you got to try to win it every year. So it'll be fun. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the coaches to devise different game plans, and maybe that benefits the team more long-term because you are more diversified. You are more ready for like to just display, I guess, different schemes and stuff like that. It's like rose tinted, right? So go ahead. But
no, let's be optimistic. Like we enter Cope season, or we're maybe already in it because the Nuggets finally like made a signing. But Will and I are going to be talking about the Cope of the fandom going into next season a lot, for the rest of the summer, because there will be dead spots this off season. But anyway, Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with us to talk through all of these topics, like with the Nuggets and the CBA and everything. It was really cool to know that you like basically have the best job in the world. You just get to like,
it's pretty cool.
Create content for the team, and they're just like, do some cool stuff.
It's cool.
So before we head out, I wanted to just give a couple of programming notes. On our next episode, Will and I are going to be talking about Summer League. The first Summer League game is this Friday. And we'll probably also be talking about the Team Canada, Team USA friendly that is going on tomorrow. And we're probably going to see Jamal play, I would assume, despite all of this, uncertainty with his contract extension. It seems like he's going to be playing for Team Canada. And next week, also look out for our pre-Olympic buzz episode with Vojislav Medic, who is going to be, talking us through his favorite teams to look out for in the Olympics. Obviously, Serbia is going to be at the top of that list. But yeah, we have a lot of really interesting content coming up this offseason. I was looking at the list again, Will, and I'm like, man, we had so many great ideas. Listeners, leave us a review. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Apple Music. Finally, it's awesome. Will did all of the things on the behind the scenes, and now you can listen to us anywhere. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.
It's true.